So I'm here with John Smith from Noble Systems, and we've been chatting quite a bit about what's been happening with lockdown, and particularly what's been happening from a technology point of view. So welcome, John. So just to start off, a little bit about what have you been seeing in terms of since lockdowns happened, since COVID lockdowns happened, what's been happening from your clients and from a Noble point of view?
Well, I think the obvious things that nearly all of our clients, if not all of our clients, have been looking at is how they can work more flexibly. So the ability to have agents obviously working from home, given the current circumstances, is absolutely critical to them. So that's something that they're all looking at and have done, and we've done lots of work with our clients to make sure that they're able to do so. Some had some home working policies in place, but the vast majority, it was something new. We had to move very quickly, and I'm pleased to say that we got a lot of those customers, working effectively from home. And now, as we move forward through the current circumstances, then they're looking at how do we change to a more flexible working structure where agents can be at home or can be in the office and can work between the two. And I think importantly for them that they're actually able to have the same experience, be at home or in the office. So we need to also be mindful of home workers might not have the best broadband, might not have great mobile signals. So, there's always the need for some flexibility in the way that we do that. So one of my particular large collections customers, we've done quite a lot of work with them to enable them to have a bit of a mix and match of their agents using mobiles for some of the voice path or their landline or whatever, or ideally the broadband circuit to get them working. So that's really helped them continue their business through this period.
Have you seen a lot of changes since the lockdown started relaxing? So we've seen lockdown relaxing a little bit, I suppose, particularly over the summer, and we were all it was all mad busy trying to get people off site, and that's sort of relaxing a bit. Are you seeing more people starting to come back in the office, or is it sort of continuing with people still working from home? What's been the relaxation sort of impact on the feeling, at least amongst clients?
It's a real mixed bag. So some clients are still retaining agents at home with a very small number of agents coming into the office. Others, trying to bring more agents and employees back into the office. It is that mixed bag, and I think that's what really drives a lot of the thought about you need to have that flexibility to do what suits the current circumstances. And obviously going forward, post COVID, we're going to get to a situation where people have experienced flexible workers working. It's bringing them great benefits in terms of their use of office space, giving people the ability to work in a different way, to be more flexible. And one of the things that we're trying to do now is look at, well, how do we enable that flexible working, and workforce management is very important. Being able to slot people in at different times of day when there's demand, and for some of our customers, they haven't had the flexibility to do that. They've got people in the office from 9 to 5 or 8 to 10 and 2 shifts and things like that, and it's really opening people's minds to working a much more flexible way, and working not necessarily on very fixed days, and looking also geographically at where their agents could be. So it's opened up a whole new world for a lot of organisations.
Yes, we've all been working from home for quite a long time. How do you think it'll evolve? I'm thinking, how do you think it'll evolve? We had some conversations around, some people are saying, well, we're just going to be off-site completely, or other people say we're going to go back to the office. Do you think we'll go back one way or the other, or is it going to be sort of it's going to be a lot flexible?
It's got to be flexible, and I think people are dealing with the unknown as well, because even if your intention is to bring your people back into the office, circumstances may dictate otherwise. So you've got to have that ability to move customers around, agents around rather, and give them that ability to provide the full service that they would be getting in the office. I think
one of the things we've been chatting about is we have to sort of remember people's circumstances are different as well. So some of us like working from home and enjoy working from home, but some people can't work from home as well. I imagine you've come across that, and it's different by different people. I mean, I imagine, particularly in the call center industry.
Completely, and I think that's one of the challenges for organisations is to look at each individual's requirements, and they may change over time, obviously. So as what's right for a home worker today isn't necessarily right for a home worker in the future. I'm certainly aware of people with young children. It's a very difficult environment sometimes to work with children running around in the background. So yeah, I think organisations have got to be very mindful of that. The companies I work with, in the collection sphere, they're very aware of both, their employee and agent engagement and what's right for them as much as their customers. So those, the understanding of the vulnerabilities around their people are as important as for their customers.
And what about geographic spread? I mean, so you talk a bit about the fact that a big push around having people working from home, working remotely. But I mean, you could have people working anywhere in the world in reality these days, right? And we always used to have that concept with outsourcing. But do you think that could even happen locally in, say, even in the UK or in any of the markets where you could have people working from anywhere, really? Do you think it's an enabler, or?
It's definitely the case that is available. I was speaking to one of my customers just the other day, and they were saying that that's great, we recruit somebody from Aberdeen, but actually right now where they are for training and things like that, they tend to want to do that in the office. So that's still giving them, and that thought process will develop. So as we give them the tools to be able to remotely work, then some of the thinking around how you train and develop and provide all of the other elements of employee management and engagement, that those also need to develop over time. But yeah, you can definitely see over time how things could spread out to a much wider geographic base. I think it's one step at a time for organisations at the moment.
So we talked a bit about remote management and how things, and people working from home. And you guys do a lot around sort of like workforce management and sort of managing remotely. You got any thoughts around how that would look from a measurement point of view? Do we need to have a new suite of measures? Do we need to think about things differently if we do have like a home working workforce, really, or a remote workforce?
Absolutely. I think the measures are largely the same. We just need to look at them slightly differently for remote agents, and particularly if you're looking at a more flexible workforce that are going to be working maybe 2 hours at the beginning of the day and 2 hours at the end of the day. You need a level of granularity in your workforce planning, and something like Noble Shift Track, it will give you that ability to slice your day up into much smaller chunks, and therefore be able to look at, okay, so where's the demand across all of your channels, be it voice, web chat, email, social media, and then decide, okay, allow the system to tell you what resources you need to be able to service those. So it becomes a more complex problem for planning, but with the right tools, then obviously you're in a position to plan that. I think another one that is of interest here is around the use of gamification to create communities, create a sense of teams, create some competition from what could feel like quite an isolated environment inside someone's little office at home. Or
the whole gamification piece and sort of that whole piece is kind of interesting, particularly when you talk about remote working, right? Because you've got to try and create that virtual community. And it's a way of doing it, and it's if you're in a call center, you're doing it in one way. If you're working remotely, that's another way of sort of like substituting some of that. I think that's interesting. I don't know if that's going to get more common.
I think gamification it's been around for a couple of years now. Noble Gamification. We've got a very strong platform with a great deal of breadth and depth, and what we do is we include a gamification success director as part of the delivery, and it's about making sure you can embed gamification as part of your organisation, the way we do things has got to include gamification. And as you make that more core to the way that you reward and recognise your agents, then that's where that guidance and the hand-holding that we can provide really helps. And we found that in a good number of our customers.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked a bit about at the start, a little bit about digital portals, the online journey, and some of the challenges with that. What are some of the things that you've seen? Have you seen that with your clients in terms of just obviously we've had volumes, we've had lockdowns. I mean, what are some of the digital automation themes you sort of picked up on?
Again, I think that the use of digital channels hasn't changed greatly, although, I think there's probably been a bit of shift one way or the other. One of my customers moved entirely away from the voice channel onto purely digital channels for a period during lockdown. So, there are opportunities there to stay open even when things are changing at the back end. One of the things that I really do see is that with digital channels, often we're seeing individual point solutions for each of the channels, and that creates some very big challenges for organisations to create and report on a consistent customer journey and customer experience. So how would you know, for instance, that somebody that has sent in an email at 2 p.m. On one day and then puts a phone call in at 5 p.m. on the same day? Often the agent isn't aware of that. Some of those interactions can be captured within CRM or collections platforms, but not necessarily in real time and not necessarily at the granularity that you need. So
in terms of the future of call centres with COVID, do you think voice is going to play less of a role than it did in the past? Now we've learned about digital interactions. What's your feelings about that?
So voice change is going to be still absolutely critical going forwards, but it changes. So digital channels, and as we bring in capabilities like chatbots and AI and those sorts of automation, they're going to be able to handle a lot of the repetitive, more straightforward tasks. And what's left are complex interactions that really need an agent that's capable in their own terms. So that brings in the need again for highest level, good levels of motivation, which is where gamification comes in. But you also need to support those agents with information. So, for instance, the Noble Desktop Composer allows us to provide all of the information to consolidate the systems. And again, we see in many customers, agents are trying to wrestle with multiple CRM collection systems, knowledge bases, scripting systems, and to bring that all into a single pane of glass, a single window that allows the agent to provide to have all the information they need at their fingertips, and to some extent driven by process within that platform. Then that gives the consistency that your customers need, and also allows you to onboard agents more quickly, so you can start bringing them into a complex environment, routing the right calls to the right agents with the right level of capability. And again, that's all something we've got within the Noble platform.
I do wonder if the lockdown piece is sort of like it's enabled us to sort of like start trying more digital interaction. So it's been a bit of an enabler for the industry to sort of move the agenda forward, and maybe it wasn't there before. And so is there now a bigger pie of interactions that can be done automatically? I mean, the repetitive interactions, but there's still sort of like a need for doing what humans do, right? I mean, we analyze, we discuss, we gather information. It's what we do. We're talking to other humans. We have to have that two-way interaction, and it's sort of it. And it's kind of like, so there's always that need, but it sort of like uses the higher human skill rather than just the more straightforward kind of things. And I think there's probably there's opportunity to use systems to do that, I would think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think one of the keys to that is identifying those repetitive interactions. And so, that's where the likes of speech analytics comes in, to capture those types of interactions and drill down into that data. So, Noble's post-call speech analytics conversations, as it's called, allows us to drill right down there and create word clouds. So you can really, from a management point of view, understand what's going on. Back to what I was saying earlier about having a single view of the customer journey and the customer interaction, being able to mine that information, be that a voice interaction or any of the digital channels, enables you to fully understand what's going on. So how many, conversations are going on that contain great information, good or bad, about the customer journey that could be unearthed and could completely change the customer's experience of your organization as a customer's organization.
Okay. So I think so what do you expect the future to be? So if we look out 5-10 years time, what's next on the horizon? What do you think would be what do you think's next? We talked about speech analytics, we talked a bit about omni-channel or communication. We talked a bit about some of the workforce management stuff, those kind of things. But what's next? What do you think next? What's the next development?
So I think
and will COVID drive it, right? I mean, it is an enabler for us in some ways.
I think COVID has created an environment for change, I guess, and many organisations are looking at, well, we need change. We know that we've got this issue with being able to enable our agents to work remotely, and that's raised a whole heap of other questions. So that's one very big part of it is that the future is the whole remote working environment, and I think organisations will need some support to get through that and understand what that means from many different aspects. One very important aspect of that is security. So secure payments. If you're an organisation that takes payments over the phone, we know that many organisations are relying on stop-start of recordings. In a home working environment, really that doesn't cut it any longer. That isn't good enough to meet the today's security requirements. So something like Noble Secure Pay Assist completely deadens the tones as they're keyed in from the customer, prevents the agent seeing anything on the screen, therefore completely securing that transaction, and really importantly, keeping the recording going to prevent any potential fraud in that period when the recording has been stopped. So that's a today technology. It's not about the future, but it's really, really important. I think other areas. To answer your question about has it brought about change, COVID? I think there's changes coming. Maybe it's hastened it. I think lots of organisations are looking at making better use of self-service, and I think it's still the point that there's a lot of technology out there that's been around a long time that needs good implementation. So by using the tools that we talked about, going back and looking, is your IVR doing everything that it could do? Are you maximising the self-service opportunities within that? Have you integrated your IVR? Noble's absolute strength is integration with systems through the IVR, through the agent desktop and elsewhere. So being able to maximise those integration points to either automate out the interaction away from agents, or to provide the agent with the maximum information available, and to take vital seconds off every interaction. So for instance, ID&V, identification verification, only needs to be done once through the IVR, and then it's done, and and away you go. So that's what they're today technologies, but I think for a lot of organisations it's still the future to be implemented. Some more futuristic things, I guess, and it really brings me back to it's all about the implementation. Is things like chatbots. Chatbots are great and AI is great, but it has to be implemented in the right way, and you have to be addressing the issues that the customer wants to address. So all of these things on the Noble roadmap, they're coming along. Biometrics, addressing that ID&V need again. Those things are coming along. So, I think what does a future contact center look like? It looks like something that's very distributed across multiple sites, across home workers, office workers, people that are going to be much more flexible, dipping in, dipping out of work as needs, as needed, with huge amounts of support from the tools that they have in front of them. And ideally, you want that simplified to a level where it makes the agent's job as easy as possible, while dealing with those very complex questions that the customers are going to be asking, because everything else has been automated.
It's interesting. I think it's interesting that we talk a lot about what the future is going to be, but the future is actually a lot of it is here now. It's just not implemented yet, and you just wonder if some of the changes that have happened with lockdown, it's an enabler for us to implement those future technologies that are actually here today, rather than waiting sort of 5-10 years. That's quite exciting, really.
I think so. I think the technologies we've all seen, technologies implemented and perhaps not got the maximum return on investment due to the lack of regard for the amount of effort that's needed sometimes to get the best out of them. And so on one hand, effort, but the other thing is having the information at your fingertips. So if you have got all of that data in one place, in a single platform across all channels, you've got the recorded calls, you've got the speech analytics data, or the analytics data that shows you all of the words and phrases that were spoken or during an interaction. That gives an organisation a huge amount of data to be able to go away and look at where they're going to really get benefit from the likes of chatbots. So I think that's where that's what the
customer as well, right?
Precisely. We've all had frustrating experiences with speech recognition systems that are poorly implemented.
Well, John, thanks very much for spending the time. I really appreciate it. Some great topics we discussed there, so I think that's fantastic, and look forward to speaking with you soon.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate the time, and good speaking to you.